Now we are going to start the forum. The very first session is Ms. Raphaelle Hennekinne, Director of Sustainability Policy at Digital Europe. She will speak on the topic, Key Issues in ESPR Implementation in the Electronics Industry. Please welcome her with a big round of applause.
Does it work now? Yes? Yeah? Okay, very good. Okay, so starting again. So just a few words about our organization, Digital Europe, for those who don't know it. So we are a trade association based in Brussels. Our role is to represent the tech industry in the heart of the European institutions and to influence the very wide range of policies that affect our sector. So we count 120 corporate members from Europe, North America, and Asia. Few of them are from Korea, like LG and Samsung, or have activities there. We also have 41 national associations across the EU, including the UK and Turkey. And through these national associations, we are very proud to represent over 45,000 companies, including SMEs, across the globe. So over the years, we have actually expanded our membership beyond, let's say, the traditional hardware manufacturing companies to companies who provide cutting-edge technologies for vertical sectors, such as finance, mobility, healthcare, or defense. So our main expertise, of course, relies on the pure digital policy. Take, for example, the recent EU AI Act, but we also advocate for a broader, resilient and stronger Europe open to like-minded partners. And we have developed, obviously, an expertise on sustainability topics, and I will focus today on the eco-design. We also, sorry, just going to the next slide, just another presentation of our activities, and I would like to mention that we also lead or contribute to EU-funded projects, such as CIRPAS, which leads on the deployment of the DPP. So as an association that represents notably OEMs, our vision is that competitiveness and sustainability should go hand by hand with digital technologies as a key accelerator. So the compass you see here is the European Commission Competitiveness Compass. So this is a concept that the Commission has recently announced with the idea that the Commission should set a path for Europe to be more competitive, to boost its growth, but also to be the first continent to be climate neutral. So we subscribe to this vision, and we believe that all sectors can really accelerate this path. Ecodesign is a very good example of that. The European Commission recently tried to calculate the impact of ecodesign legislation, and it's clear that it benefited the consumers by reducing the energy bills, but also the industry by creating new market avenues and jobs. The ecodesign is estimated to have created 346,000 jobs in total. So I will move then to the next challenge because, sorry, I think I missed a slide. Or we? Okay. Weirdly, a slide is missing, but that's fine. Okay. It's fine. Just to mention, and it's a pity that we can't see here because we have recently published a circular economy, let's say, guidebook last year to set out our vision for circularity in Europe. And our key recommendation was actually to focus on implementation. Because during the last mandate of the European Commission, a lot of new legislations have been adopted. And now it's time to focus on this implementation and make sure that it happens in the right way, that it happens timely, that it is done in coordination with stakeholders, and in a way that the new requirements can be measurable and enforceable. So electronic products have, let's say, a particular relationship with Ecodesign. The ESPR is new, but before the ESPR in 2009, the Commission adopted the Ecodesign framework already, applying to energy-related products. So it's 26 years of implementation already for electronic products. Just moving here to give you a snapshot of the different categories of products that are covered in Digital Europe, usually called the lots. So you can see here displays, smartphones, computers, external power supplies, servers and data storage products, and imaging equipment. Of course, as ESPR cover much more products, but we have, let's say, a specific expertise in those ones, adding some horizontal requirements on standby and off mode. And let's say that the ESPR really builds on this experience and add a new dimension with a focus on material efficiency requirements, but this is not totally new to us. If you take the example of smartphones and tablets, actually, on the 20th of June, so last month, this new regulation has already entered into force. So now the smartphones have to comply with requirements on repairability, disassembly, and so on and so forth. So we have already, let's say, integrated this mindset of going beyond the energy efficiency requirements to the material efficiency requirements. So coming back to the challenges. So as we see, the first challenge is a timeline. With the ESPR, the Commission has set out a very ambitious timeline for itself and for us. So as I said, like now the legislative act is adopted in force, but a lot of work remains to be done for the implementation. Because the ESPR will affect these different categories of products, plus some new horizontal requirements, for example, on recyclability and recycled content, on all repairability. And to come up with this new, let's say, secondary legislation, the Commission has to produce some preparatory studies to really do this assessment. So it will be a lot of work, and as you can see, the timeline is not so long. If you take the case, for example, of the digital product passport, it is supposed to apply to batteries already in 2027. So we really have a question mark on whether this will be actually possible. And for these horizontal requirements, this is really a lengthy process. If you take the example as of the standby and off mode requirements that I mentioned before, this particular act took 8 years to be formulated and adopted by the European Commission with many delays. So a challenge for us as electronic industry will be to be part of this process and to hopefully anticipate those timelines and the uncertainties that come with those timelines. And we know that the redesign of products takes time. There is a life cycle of products, let's say of the production, and usually we ask the Commission to make sure that there is sufficient time between the adoption of the requirements and the actual entry into force. And we know also from experience that usually guidance is needed, Q&As, or sometimes even corrigendum, because those legislations are so technical that there is a bit of a trial and error, let's say, approach, and we really need to have this time as industry to integrate those requirements into the products. Another thing that is quite remarkable here is the fact that the Commission has set a transition timeline. So I'm coming back to this slide because you see that for each product category there is a different date. So there will be two, let's say, parallel streams. Because some products are still subject, let's say, to the former Ecodesign requirements. So if you take the example of servers and data storage products, but also the case of the computers, they are being reviewed at the moment, but under the old framework. And there is a deadline for that. The Commission is supposed to terminate, to complete this revision by the 30th of December 2026, which will come quite rapidly, actually, because we know that there are different steps in this process, and the Commission needs to consult the member states, expert groups, so all of this takes time. So again, there is a question mark as to whether the Commission will manage to complete these revisions by this deadline. And at the same time, the Commission is already starting to implement the ESPR. And as far as we are concerned, displays is the first product category in our case to be concerned by the ESPR, which means as well potential introduction of a DPP or similar concept for displays. Another challenge, which seems sometimes obvious, but it's good to remind it, is the regulatory interplay. Because the ESPR is just, let's say, one star in a galaxy of different legislations. And of course here, they are not all mentioned. We have done our internal, let's say, assessment that for one product, around more than 30 different European legislations can apply to the same product, which is of course, really a lot for the OEMs. If you take the example of batteries and smartphones, so batteries is not represented here, but we saw a real question mark on which regulation should actually apply when it comes to removing batteries of smartphones. So we had to engage with the Commission as a trade association to make this clarification and ensure that it was clear that the smartphone regulation applying the lex specialis would take precedent over the batteries regulation. So from this galaxy of different legislations can of course come some questions, and we also always call the institutions to avoid double regulation so that the product cannot be, would not be covered by different requirements clashing with each other. There's also a very interesting development coming up with the revision of the WE directive. So that's end of life. It's going to be really a landmark initiative for the Commission with a big ambition to improve it. And the Commission said that the WE revision would actually mirror the Ecodesign, but that remains to be seen how it will actually work. Those new horizontal requirements also represent a challenge for our industry. So as I mentioned, that's part of the novelties of the ESPR. The idea is that if different products have similarities, then the Commission could adopt requirements that would apply to those different products. So just an extract here of the working plan that the Commission recently published. So clearly there will be a focus on repairability, including a potential scoring. By the way, the picture that you see here, it's actually the French scoring, so it should be the EU one, but I took the French, sorry about that. And then our recycled content and recyclability of EEE. So the Commission is now starting the process of the assessment of these potential measures. But of course, we have some concerns because, again, we want to avoid double regulation. Then we always very much believe that eco-design regulation should be done on a case-by-case basis to be really tailored to the characteristics of each product group. This is really important because there is a high variability, especially if you take the example of recycled content. From one product to another, it's going to be very different to incorporate recycled content depending on features such as safety or durability or reliability. And it's the same for recyclability. And it's very important in eco-design, of course, to take into consideration the trade-offs, because sometimes if you want to, let's say, privilege or favor one factor, one parameter, such as recyclability, it can come at the detriment of another one, like the robustness of the product. So that's also something that, as an association, we always advocate for. But obviously, this is much more difficult in a horizontal requirement to make this assessment. And finally, of course, verification is going to be an issue when it comes to recycled content. I think it's not just the case for the electronics industry. I think other sectors are concerned, but there are some questions as to how the market surveillance authorities will be actually able to verify this recycled content, the percentage of presence of recycled content, and it really poses a question on the effectiveness of the surveillance, and of course of competitive advantage, because let's say that the good players that will play by the rules, for them it would be difficult to demonstrate that there are also some players who will not play by those rules. Finally, a last challenge, the wish of the Commission to increase transparency, which is a very good intention, through different elements of the ESPR. So first on the disclosure of the unsold goods, and then of course through the DPP, which has been already quite discussed yesterday, so I won't go into the detail of the digital product passport, but just a few words. So indeed, on unsold goods, now the ESPR mandates that companies should disclose information on the volumes of unsold goods, unsold consumer products that they dispose of. We understand that for some products, the Commission even wants to ban actually the destruction of these unsold goods. For the case of electronic products, this is not a reality now, but it could become so in the future. And actually, this information that manufacturers will have to provide will be part of the assessment that the Commission will make, should they or not include all products in the scope of this ban. We have also some concerns here on how to disclose this information. We have just made some comments. We are making some comments right now to the Commission to actually flag that we should really clarify who is responsible for that disclosure, because of course, again, it's a long chain of operators, and also the distinction between B2B and B2C products, which is not always clear. So we want to make sure, basically, that the obligations are limited to the goods that are discarded from the facilities of the OEMs. Coming to the DPP and EPREL, so I'm mentioning EPREL here. So for those who are not familiar with EPREL, so this is a database that the Commission has created where all the energy, well, not all, but certain energy-related products are registered with the energy label. So the objective is to give a chance to the consumers to connect to the database and compare products. So for example, smartphones and tablets that I just mentioned are now on EPREL. And the Commission is leaving open the possibility to use EPREL rather than the DPP for some products. But here again, there is an uncertainty into which will be covered by what. And also what we see is that EPREL does not work like a DPP, so it has its own limitation. For example, you cannot, one of the features of the DPPs that the Commission would like to see is the possibility for some actors, to edit the information, to add the information, especially in the spirit of circularity, so adding that, how the life of the product has evolved, which is not possible under EPREL. And another big limitation that we see is that with the DPP, you would have the possibility as an OEM to include voluntary information. So for example, you could have information for the consumer on how to dispose of the product, on how to use the product in a sustainable way. But this is not something that is currently available in EPREL. So we think there might be a need for adjustments if EPREL is really to be used as a sort of equivalent to the DPP. And of course, the DPP itself, it has great potential, but as we used to say in Brussels, you need to learn to walk before you run, meaning that we really need to have a gradual approach to the DPP. And we also see that digitalization can happen in different ways. So even before we have the DPP fully enforced, we can have digital energy labels, for example, meaning that we can remove all the paper from the boxes of the products and instead have a digital energy label. So that's part of the things that we advocate for as Digital Europe, and I hope I provided you with an overview of those challenges. Of course, we could go again and again, and it's there's many more to the eye than in this presentation. But thank you very much for your attention. 감사합니다.
네,
Thank you very much, Director Hennekinne. It was a great presentation. Regarding the implementation of the ESPR, she shared the trends in Europe, and she actually highlighted tasks and how we can prepare the timeline and how we can harmonize many different regulations. We need to consider the characteristics of products, how we can ensure realistic regulations. There are many different environmental criteria required by ESPR, and they need to be harmonized, or they could cause side effects. So she shared the current trend and also many challenges facing the ESPR in Europe. Once again, please give her a big round of applause. During the panel discussion, I'm going to raise some questions. Let me ask those questions already. In the European Committee, they plan to cancel Green Directive Plan. Because of the trade-offs between ESPR and Green Trade Directive. Maybe that was the reason. What are the relations between ESPR and Green Claim Directive? Would you please give us details on that? In the European industry, how they look at ESPR? Do they really think they can comply with ESPR? What are the reactions of the industry?